I was asked yesterday to give my thoughts on AI art, and the person who asked me wanted to have a conversation, but my life work situation really isn't as such that I can schedule interviews. So I thought I would respond in a way like this, and I'll probably put this audio out on YouTube and in my podcast feed, my defunct podcast feed. So at first I wasn't going to respond, but then I got to thinking about the idea of AI art afterwards, and I jotted down like a 2 or 3 paragraphs full of half ideas and broken sentences. And I thought within a relatively short amount of time I could bring those together and say what I think. What I think about AI art, the first thing I think is that the term itself is almost a redundant term. AI art, artificial intelligent art, or artificial intelligence art. Well, all art is artificial. The word art and the word artificial, they come from the same place. So the term for me spotlights how, for the most part, we've lost track of that. We've lost track of the amount of artifice and the amount of art that is already in everything around us in the modern world. It's kind of ironic, too, because in the modern world, art is often understood in a sort of hoped for way as the most human aspect of ourselves, the most special, the most inner, true, honest expression of who we are. Through art, we can get at our truest potentiality, in a sense, and yet art is artificial. So, can something artificial also be true? Can artificiality be divorced from humanity when humanity and the evolution of humanity, the proliferation of the human race over tens of thousands of years, has a lot to do with our ability to use artifice, to make tools? I mean, tools are sort of artificial extensions. Even that is a redundant term, an artificial extension. Every extension is, in a sense, artificial. Human beings can't survive in the wild that easily for or over that many places on Earth, and yet human beings were able to spread all over. They were able to make an artificial habitat greater than any other animal. We construct our habitats are increasingly artificial. And yet, at least in the last 100 years, probably more in the last 200, there's this rise of thinking about art as the most truest, most inner expression of who we really naturally are, and yet art is artificial. So there's a tension there that I don't think is appreciated as often as it could be. And it seems as though AI art, I like AI art. Now, that's not to say that I like most pieces of AI art that I see, but I'm not scared or threatened by AI art. And yet, I have a lot of reservations about technology. I think technology has been a tremendous challenge because technology has sort of gotten away from us. Technology has increasingly proliferated almost on its own, that technology was a tool that we use, but at a certain point, around 100 years ago, technology, you could say that technology began using human beings as its tools to build up and proliferate itself to make technology spread and improve, whereas technology was supposed to improve humanity and the lives of human beings. Is that happening, or are we improving technology at our own expense as people are more and more stressed out? etc., etc. And there's a lot of other obvious examples that you can cite as instances of technology harming human beings, obviously. So I've been skeptical of technology and escalating technology, and the thinker that I like the most is a French philosopher who died maybe 30 years ago, Jacques Ellul, Ellul, Ellul. And he was a great skeptic of technology and a great critic of technology. He wasn't a Luddite necessarily or at all, and yet he was a great critic of technological advancement. And when I read a lot of what Jacques Ellul wrote, the experience I have is like, yes, this is exactly what I think. You've put into words thoughts that I've been having. This is exactly what I think. I often think that. I don't think exactly like him all the time, but usually when I'm reading Ellul, I think this is exactly what I believe to be true. And if I was of the age that Jacques Ellul was, he wrote most of his best work in the 60s through the early 90s. If I was his age then, I would probably be having pretty much even closer to exactly the same thoughts that he had. So I'm a skeptic of technology, and yet I give a general thumbs up to AI art. And I think the reason why is because AI art it seems to represent an end or a turning point, one, and two, because so much of it seems humorous. And I'm reminded somehow of the fact that when Franz Kafka read his work out loud, he would be overtaken by humor. He would laugh at the trial when he read it, and there's a certain way of reading Franz Kafka, and particularly the trial, that makes it seem tremendously hilarious. It is really, really funny from a certain angle, even though what it's describing is horrific and anti-human. And I think Franz Kafka was in touch with his humanity, even though he knew the threat and the cruelty of bureaucracy with all of its technicalities. And in some way, I think AI art is like the way to look at the technological process that's been happening to us and laugh. So much of AI art, it makes us laugh, and it's usually inadvertently. Like we see the AI art that some program created and we laugh at it. What does that laughter mean? Are we laughing at the computers for being stupid? Are we laughing at how weird a computer's interpretation of certain humanity is? You know, you feed the subject, you feed the idea of what you want the AI program to create, and it spits something out that looks warped and absurd and odd and weird, and it's humorous. And sometimes it's humorous because the computer seems stupid to have gotten things that way. On the other hand, as AI improves, are we laughing at the computers? Are the computers in a sense laughing at us? Are we laughing at the computers laughing at us? Or are we laughing with the computers who are laughing at us? Now, of course, the computers themselves are probably not really laughing. They're certainly not really laughing. I would hope. Are they? Does someone have proof of this? And that's because what we call AI art, it's not really intelligence. It's machine learning. It's not really AI as science fiction has caused us to imagine AI. But there's something going on with it. And when thinking about the extent to which it's not really AI, you know, that little truth in this whole conversation, that what we're calling AI is not really AI, well, the thing that's not there, that doesn't make it AI, is independent will, is the initiative that human beings have to provide. We still have to provide the prompt. And that's the initiative, that's the drive, that's the ingredient that still needs to be provided to the technology. And in a sense, that underscores or puts a fine line on the trajectory of where all of this technological development has been going. Whereas once the technological system required like actual human work, physical work, now the input that is required from human beings to proliferate the artificial system is less and less and less. We need technology more and more and more for our proliferation, but the proliferation of technology and the proliferation of artificiality needs us less and less and less. The incentives that have been provided are sort of reversing who's in charge, and for the advancement of the technological society. I mean, I've said this in other places, but when there's a famous term that Jacques Ellul uses and other people have used, the technological society. And at first, in its original way that it was meant to be taken, it meant the human society that had technology in it. But what I've said is that you can look at it a different way, and you can look at that term in a new way, that as things progress, the society is less and less human, and really it's a society of technology, that the technological objects and the technological communication avenues, they form their own society. Your smart TV and your smart fridge and the fiber optics cable and the Bluetooth connections, that's a society. You know, these little contraptions talk to each other and communicate and send energy and waves to each other. That's the society of technology. So with AI art, the human input is reduced to just a little bit of input, and then colossal amounts of information and processing happen to produce extremely sophisticated, highly wrought artifices. And it's almost like, this is all we have left. All we have left is we just have to give the basic merest input, and then technology can create amazing things now. A related aspect of this reminds me also of the trend that modern media has gone on for the last, 100 years or so. And that is that modern media is more image oriented. So with AI art, you have human beings, but they have to give language, words. So with AI art, with the process of AI art, it is human words being used to create images, and the yield curve, the process there, the words to images, and just a few words can yield fantastic images. There's something appropriate for AI art to be that way. And I understand too that these AI programs can create verbal language also, so it doesn't have to be images, it could be text, yes, but in this question of AI art in particular, the process involved, it reminds me of the overall technological trends, the societal trends, the media trends, where the 20th century was the century of the image, really, with movies and TV, and then computers became more and more image oriented. I think that's all I had to say. I would just close with the idea that for a while now, everybody is an artist. Many people have said things like this. More and more people consider themselves artists, and it's almost a question now of, well, try not being an artist. Can anyone now not be an artist? Or are we all little artists? Are we all little DJs, little kings and queens of our own media empire? I mean, they said Howard Stern was the king of all media. Well, now we're all little Howard Sterns. We've all got our little podcasts. Most of us. We all have playlists and we curate different media farms. We're all producing art, and try not being an artist. It's almost harder to not be one. I mean, most of us are horrible artists. That goes without saying, probably. But I mean, where I'm going with all this is that with the emergence of AI art, a lot of artists are threatened by it. I think it's good that AI art is putting pressure on people. Maybe they don't need to be artists, is what I'm saying. Maybe the effort that they're putting into trying to get by as artists, maybe they could apply that effort into not being artists, into doing something more real, doing something that would yield more success. Because the fact is that we have too much art. We have too much art. We have too much content. Way too much content. I mean, who can look at the amount of content that's out there now and think, you know what this smorgasbord needs is more content, is more TV shows, more podcasts. It does not need that. It does not need any more art. It doesn't need it. It really doesn't. We have way too much of it, and most of it is not high quality. I mean, I would advocate for a dramatic reduction in the amount of available media content. I think that would be good for everybody if there was less available. So, on the other hand, AI can create a lot of content easily. Well, what does that do? Does it devalue content of a certain sort? I think it does. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious that it devalues a lot of art. It devalues a lot of content. Maybe there's an upside to that. Of course, I can see why people are upset. I can see why, quote unquote, working artists struggling to get by are upset if a company or anyone can just use an AI program for cheaper to get a more impressive result. I can obviously see that. And yet, look, the way things have been going, it's just not working out anyway. So, with the emergence of AI art, and it's being refined and improved all the time, like I said, it seems like a turning point. It seems like some sort of turning point, and we're way overdue for some sort of big turning point. And I would try to use it to your advantage, whether you need more art or whether you're having a hard time producing it. Maybe just do something else in life. I mean, I wish certain people smacked me across the face earlier in my life and suggested that I stop trying to do things and do other more productive, more useful, more realistic things. Maybe in a collective sense, that's what AI art will be doing. Do I think AI art will produce masterpieces? No, but I think that it can be used as a great tool, and I think that it can produce art that is amusing as hell and can have some redeeming qualities. Certainly, AI art seems to address the zeitgeist now in a way that a lot of other artists and art tries to address it and almost always is unable to really capture the moment. But AI art is the moment, and I've heard this is the last thing I'm going to say. I've heard it said that all AI art is about AI. I don't see that as a drawback. I mean, the difference between fiction and literature is that literature is words that take itself seriously and self-consciously as language, as artful words. There's a self-consciousness in the very language of true literature that is absent in fiction. That's why I would say that someone like Stephen King is not literature, because there's not an artistic self-consciousness to the language that a Stephen King uses in the way that all literature, serious literature, in addition to the other themes of the work, there's an attention to the language itself, and there's an art to the language itself. So it isn't a critical error or a Achilles heel for a certain genre of art to be, in a sense, self-conscious as the type of art that it is. How do you get film to talk about the art of film? Certainly many great films have been able to do that, but it's not easy. How do you get a landscape painting to talk about the history and the art, the canon of landscape paintings? It's not exactly clear. It's difficult to do. How do you get a book to sort of insinuate itself into the canon of Western literature? It's not exactly easy. And yet AI art, even though it's not actually self-conscious, but it seems so. It seems like all AI art is about AI art, that it's conscious of itself as this type of artifice. And I think what it should cause us to do is to reflect on ourselves and our society and think more about the extent of which and the ways in which it is already artificial.